Hi, my name is Areti Despina Tsausa Istamatoyani, and today I'm going to be talking about the political and economic union of Europe, also known as the European Union. I have attached a table of contents which summarizes what I am going to be talking about on each slide, starting from 1 and reaching all the way to 12 on my works cited. I will be talking about the list of member states, the currency used in the European Union, the historical development, facts, purpose, advantages, disadvantages, and the effectiveness of the European Union, while also talking about matters such as Canada's history with the European Union. To begin with, the Union member countries are 27, and there are many countries, including France, Greece, Germany, Spain, Italy, and many, many more. They all have a shared currency, the euro, and excuse me, not all of them, just 19 out of 27 member countries. The euro currency was commenced on January 1st, 1999, and it was created in order to strengthen and unify the European market. There were countries such as Denmark and the UK that chose to keep their own currency, which led to opt out provisions being made. And there are also countries that do not meet the criteria for adopting the euro. The European Union is a concept that started a long time ago, and it was triggered by the events of the World War II, which affected plenty of countries in the continent of Europe. It dates back to 1950 when it was named the European Coal and Steel Community and had six members: Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. It went through various adaptations and changes over the decades, and its main purpose was to enhance and preserve economic and political cooperation within the continent. I have also found a few useful facts about the European Union. First of all, it is a supranational political and economic union that has a population that is estimated at 449 million, totaling at 5.8 of the global population. The European Union used to include Britain, a country that later decided to exit the European Union for various socio-political reasons. And something that I find really interesting is that if a European passport holder chooses to travel from Europe within Europe, there is an area which is established, and they will most likely not experience passport control policies. And one more thing is that the European Union has a lot of humanitarian initiatives and has been democratic in terms of policies promoting unity, peace, and freedom. I also visited the official European Union website, which informed me about the goals and purpose of the European Union. And since it's not just an economic union, it is also a political union, they have a lot of goals surrounding promoting peace, offering freedom and security, taking a lot of consideration towards asylum, immigration, preventing combat crime. They're establishing an internal market. They are also focused on sustainable development, uh, good employment rates, combating racism, social discrimination, and many, many more, which you can feel free to pause and read so I don't tire the listeners. Canada and the European Union have had a long, strategic, and powerful relationship rooted in similar ideals. Their trade is bilateral and always prosperous. Their oldest formal relationship dates back to 1959, when the agreement for cooperation in the peaceful uses of atomic energy was signed, making Canada um, one of the oldest alliances that the European Union completed. And in the present day, Canada has two standing agreements with the European Union, one being the CETA and the other one being the SPA. The CETA and the SPA were signed and applied in 2017. The CETA, the Canada and European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, governs the economic relations between Canada and Europe, which has helped create new opportunities in terms of trade, foreign investment, and enhancing cooperation between the two, while also the Strategic Partnership Agreement um, regards matters such as security, defense, development, climate change, energy, and many, many environmental causes, along with public health. And it promotes bilateral dialogues in such areas among senior officials of the Canada and European Union Joint Cooperation Committee, and the opportunity, of course, to take stock of the relationship between the two partners. The European Union has many advantages. One of them would be the humanitarian aid that they have provided. Uh, when humanitarian emergencies occur or when major disasters strike, the European Union has helped countries and regions that are in need within but not limited to the continent. For example, in 2021, the humanitarian budget exceeded 2.4 million euros, and up until today, the number of people who receive humanitarian funding each year reached 120 million. They have also helped Haiti and Ukraine while condemning numerous leaders of abusive governments for their actions. Another characteristic of the European Union that could be considered an advantage would be the common currency between the European countries because it offers benefits such as eliminated tariffs, currency exchange rates in aspects such as domestic trade and tourism. Labor and foods have more transparent prices, and that enhances the flow of goods and services throughout the region, while also making tourism or shipping cheaper, easier, and stress free. Another big advantage of the European Union would also be their government system, which for over half a century has provided peace and stability within, but not limited to its borders. In fact, in 2012, the European Union was awarded the Nobel Prize for its achievement. They have policies in play that deal with international conflict, diplomacy, and general relation, but they have also treated the European Union citizens fairly and equally, providing a plethora of advantages and policies anywhere within the European border. They have also offered an abundance of rights for citizens regarding studying, working, or retiring anywhere in the European Union, promoting unity and easy migration. And in addition, any European Union citizen has employment rights, digital protection rights, consumer rights, local business rights. In general, they do have a well established and structured Charter of Human Rights with multiple policies promoting peace and mutual respect. That is very, very good to have, especially in a political organization. Another two advantages of the European Union would definitely be their environmental and food health incentives. They ensure food quality and health by holding standards in place for protection of the climate, environment, and human health, along with biodiversity and food quality. By 2050, they are planning to become climate neutral. And what's really remarkable is that in 2014, the European Union achieved its 2020 target on cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 20%. And when it comes to food quality, a good example would be that there is zero tolerance when it comes to antibiotic growth promoters since 2006. And lastly, another advantage of the European Union would definitely be their trade, because they have managed to produce 15% of the world's trade while implementing one strategy for the totality of the Union, a single market focusing on diplomacy. Their open trade makes them a strong and reliable candidate for trade endeavors. When it comes to protectionism, the European Union values local agriculture and local business owners, providing support and holding large corporations accountable in terms of upkeeping their contracts regarding tax payments, which is really, really good to show that the European Union is not only prospering on the global market, but they're also making efforts to protect their domestic market. Unfortunately, there are some disadvantages regarding the European Union. First and foremost, in my opinion, one of their biggest fails would be their refugee oversight, where even though they have helped multiple refugees find shelter within their borders, they also have managed to create a crisis where refugees are not welcome the way the European Union claims to welcome them. There's not proper oversight on borders in different countries and regions, such as Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Greece, and Poland, which leads to unlawful treatment, transportation, and exploitation of various refugees making their way into Europe. I have been a European Union citizen for most of my life, and I lived in Greece, and I have witnessed myself that a sad reality is that many refugees coming into Europe for a better life actually experience racism, oppression, awful living situations, abused, forced labor, forced prostitution, and are also subjects to death, since there are many illegal organizations that transfer refugees in Europe in extremely unsafe and improper conditions. Unfortunately, a lot of refugees are being blackmailed by organizations withholding their personal documentation, such as their certificates or their passports, and they're coercing them into many, many activities. That is a growing crisis in Europe, and it should be addressed because it will cause an effect on many, many other spectrums of the European Union, which also brings me to another issue that is pretty much recent and has been observed in many corners of the world, but especially after COVID 19, poverty numbers have been rising. For example, in 2023, 21.4 of the percent of the European Union population was at risk for poverty and social exclusion, with majority being women. And in addition to that, 22.4 of the populations living in households with dependent children were also at risk of poverty or social exclusion in the same year. Unfortunately, there are many disparities between European countries, where some are very prosperous while others have alarming poverty rates. Another problem would be climate change, where despite promised oversight and, of course, their very remarkable achievement in 2014, they have failed to upkeep promises when it comes to accountability for member countries' greenhouse emissions. And that way, they have reached the top 10 of greenhouse emitters globally. Some other disadvantages of the European Union are heavily connected to the euro currency. One of the largest drawbacks of the euro would be their monetary policy. Essentially, a monetary policy is a set of tools used by a nation's central bank where they control the overall money supply while promoting economic growth and employing strategies such as revising interest rates and changing bank reserve requirements. By having a common currency, things become very, very complicated. For parts of the European Union to be prospering, there needs to be low unemployment rates along with high growth, which is not the case in many countries. For example, Greece, the country which I lived in, had a very high unemployment rate, which led our country through a financial crisis. More specifically, the disparity between the economic circumstances in various European countries and the connection to interest rates becomes more complicated as soon as the common currency comes into play, where in theory, countries with high unemployment do not need to worry much about inflation because of the availability of the unemployed to produce more goods. But unfortunately, interest rates cannot be simultaneously raised in the high growth country and lowered in the low growth country when they have a single currency like the euro. In fact, according to sources, the euro caused quite the opposite of standard economic policy to be implemented during the European debt crisis. And as growth was slowing and unemployment was increasing in countries like Italy and Greece, investors were fearing for their solvency, driving up interest rates, which I find is a very big drawback of the European Union. And even though they have managed to go through plenty of crisis and especially economic ones, that could be detrimental to their economy in the near future. Another problem with the European Union would also be the implementation cost, where in order for countries to enter the European Union, aside from government accordance in terms of policies and laws, there's also an implementation cost, which essentially is an amount of money that needs to be paid to the European Union in order for a country to have the euro currency and become a member. Unfortunately, that can be an amount that is relatively hard to pay for a country that is not yet developed. But how effective and prosperous the European Union is really a subject for discussion. And a lot of people could say that they're not as successful, but in my opinion, the European Union focuses on the importance of democracy, free speech, respect, and the implementation of a single market in terms of global trade. And that way, they have managed to become the world's biggest exporter and importer for over 100 countries, and they have an annual gross domestic product of 19.4 trillion. In addition to that, the European Union has managed to account for about 15% of the world's trade and put themselves among the biggest players of global trade, the United States and China, which is very remarkable. Also, their common currency has eliminated fees and currency exchange rates within the borders despite certain drawbacks. Lastly, they have managed to achieve healthy and prosperous migration with many policies in place for European Union citizen protection. The general overview of the European Union displays characteristics of a prosperous, powerful, and diplomatic organization, and I think that they should just make a few more changes and upkeep their promises in terms of environmental aid and when it comes to corruption in order to fix the issues that they have and continue on being so prosperous. I have attached my works cited, so all of my references and the websites I used in order to find the information that I just talked about. I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed me examining the European Union.